Good morning or good afternoon. Welcome to you all, depending on where this meeting finds you. I hope you're all well. So the aim of today's training is just to go through the Pearson Edexcel International GCSE for ICT in its current form, and to just explain some of the basic concepts that go around the qualification. And I think as much as anything else, perhaps to answer any questions that you may have that you feel you haven't been able to answer or access. Just to introduce myself properly, sorry. I've been teaching ICT. My name is Matthew Tipton. I've been teaching ICT and computer science now for, I think, 18 years, if I was to count it all up, 18 years. I started actually as an ICT teacher in the swathe of ICT teachers back in the sort of, again, 18, 19 years ago, and I sort of moved through to become computer science as well. I've been fortunate enough to teach ICT in just about every guise from project only and coursework only qualifications to the previous incarnation of the ICT GCSE, which was an exam and NEAs, and through to the current incarnation where it's the exam, two exams, with the second one focusing on ICT skills. So I hope you've all got the information in front of you. I hope you've all got the delegate handbook. We will get going straight away. What I would ask, because it's a strange experience delivering these sessions. You sit and obviously you have the screen, and I know there's lots of people here. I can see there's 34 people on the call, but it's always nice to know who we are speaking to. I know that I noticed a couple of people who were on the call on Monday. So if you could, it would be great for you to just pop your name and your location into the chat, and also let us know if you are new to ICT, if you're thinking of moving to this qualification, if you've moved to this qualification or are moving and have some questions, or if you've perhaps been doing this qualification for a while and have some questions. So whatever your situation is, just give us a hello, your name, your location, and yeah, your current relationship with ICT and with this GCSE. So I can see Sharia, Bangladesh, welcome. Adam again, I think you're on a Monday, weren't you, Adam? Great. I think I saw, and I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, was it Silverius? I think you were, I've seen you just pop up Silverius. I saw you on Monday as well, which is good. Okay, so Sharia's in Riyadh. Okay, wow, fantastic, all over the place. So we've got Myanmar, Cairo, Egypt, Malaga, fantastic. Okay, Ghana, excellent. Okay, so let's keep those coming in, please. I know I do sound like a local radio host, but let us know who you are, and but we'll get on with the presentation. So this is the plan for today. We'll just go through sort of some of the aims and the agenda for this presentation. I'll give you a little bit of an overview of Pearson, and then we'll go through an overview of the qualification itself. We'll talk about the assessment objectives. Then we'll look at a little bit at the exam paper and the mark scheme, the types of questions that your students can be expected to answer and that you need to prepare them for. And then we'll do some marking practice for paper one and for paper two. With the aim is that will be the biggest block of what we're going to do today. We'll try and get you looking at some papers. I have noticed, and there's whether it's, I don't know quite what's happened, but I believe you've had the presentation shared with you, sorry. I'll be honest, I've only just noticed. You've had the presentation shared with you, which is fine. It's got all the content on, and when we get to the marking section, it's got all the marking on as well. It has taken a little bit of the jeopardy away from you, in that the document I had prepared for you didn't have the marks given for each question. We were going to go through those together afterwards. But the one you have got, I believe now, has got the questions with the mark schemes and then the responses with the marks that have been awarded. That's okay. We'll cope with that. We'll work with that. And I think it will become more of a discussion about why those marks were awarded, rather than perhaps you trying to work out how to award those marks and then discussing afterwards. but that's okay. We can work with that absolutely fine. And then we will finish with a little bit of support from Pearson. I've noticed that Tim Brady's on the call. Tim is the computer science and ICT subject lead for Pearson. He's your main contact if you have any questions after this in regards to the qualification. So he's on the call. But if you have any questions during, I'm sure we'll be able to answer them as well. Okay, so the aims and objectives of today, we're going to try to arrive at a shared understanding of the specification. Okay, so we're going to look briefly at each of the topics that make up the specification and where it is examined. Yeah, you have the specification in your pack. As with all qualifications, the specification is the first place to start, the first place to look. It's certainly the first place I go whenever I'm looking to introduce a new qualification. For example, I've just started doing the Pearson ICT so BTEC AAQ, which is a level 3 qualification. And the first thing to do is to just sit down with a specification, a highlighter, and just kind of work out what it's about and what's going to be required and what you can glean from this specification, which is often a lot. Yeah, we're going to have a look at the examination, how the papers are written and then they're assessed, how the questions might give cues to students. And we'll talk about some of the language in there. We'll have a quick look at mark schemes, the types of questions, setting questions, and then we'll do some marking exercises. And as I said, the aim is so that you know where to go for support at the end of this process. If there's a pause, it's just because I'm checking in the chat to see if there's anybody I've not welcomed yet. So hello to Basma. I think Basma, you were on the call as well the other day. Adam, yes, hello. Okay. Sridevi, welcome. Nazia, welcome. Juma, welcome. Peony, welcome. Wow, there's a good mix. Okay, great. Yeah, so yeah, there will be some marking practice that we will get into it. You'll notice how it's actually structured is you have the question and the marks. We'll work something out. Don't worry. It's going to be a good experience no matter what we do. It'll get you used to kind of looking at the questions. And if the worst thing that happens is you can see how the marks have been awarded and why, then that's great. We may well end up kind of going through a question at a time. We'll work it out when we get there. That's fine. Okay, so first of all, welcome to Pearson. Just as a little bit of information about Pearson. Oh, excuse me. So, world's leading learning company. Organizations, a huge range of qualifications out there that you can do through Pearson. And as it says, there are 350 million students a year from schools, universities, employers, a whole range of qualifications. And again, the numbers therefore speak for themselves. The range of qualifications available through Pearson, especially internationally, is great. And I've worked in Oman and I've worked in Singapore and Abu Dhabi. I'm now in the UK, but Pearson has been pretty much a constant when I've looked at what exams to deliver as a head of department. So. All right, so a little bit of an overview of the qualification. I haven't said this yet, but I'll say it anyway, and I'm sure as classroom practitioners, we all know this anyway. I'm more than happy to be stopped and have people ask questions. That's absolutely fine. At any point. Yeah, just as I said, many of us will have done the COVID years, or maybe we haven't. Maybe I'm speaking to a presentation of new teachers, but I remember the COVID years, and it is very strange to sit in front of a computer and having a noisy and interactive and energetic environment to something that a little bit more digital and clean. So it is a bit strange. So if at any point you want me to stop and you want to address something else, please do so. I will occasionally go off on a tangent about something in the qualification or the specification. Hopefully that will add some value to what we're doing as well. But if you think I'm just going off on an absolute crazy journey nowhere, just let me know. So overview of the qualification. In fact, no, I'll stop there. Does anybody have any questions so far? Or does anybody have any burning questions about Pearson or about today's meeting or what you were hoping to get out of today's meeting? Is there any of the aims and is there anything beyond the aims and objectives that people were hoping to get out of today's meeting? I know that somebody mentioned they'd like to sort of make some contacts. That's great. But is there anything beyond the aims and objectives that I mentioned? Let me put them back on the screen quickly, actually, sorry. Is there anything beyond those original aims and objectives that people were hoping to get out of the session? I will put it back on the screen when my computer reacts. There we go. Let me quickly find it. Is there anything people were hoping beyond that, beyond those aims and objectives? Again, put it in the chat, or there's the Q&A as well if you want to put it in there. But okay, I hope you all now you feel you're in the right meeting, you're in the right training, so we'll get on with it. So, as I said, your first port of call is always going to be the specification. It's the main document you need to teach the course. It's not all you need to teach the course, and we'll talk about how to access some of those resources later. Yeah, so we'll look at some of those resources later that are available through the website. But yeah, the specification is the first port of call. I'm looking at a couple of questions. Adam, as in take ICT through this qualification through Pearson. That's a great question. I don't know. It's been recorded with that question. If either Leon or Tim are in the background, they may well be able to get you the answer to that. But I don't have that number at the moment. But we'll see if we can find it for you. Okay, so yeah, as I said, the specification outlines the aims of the course, and it breaks down into pretty specific detail all the content you must cover and all the information you need about assessing your students, and we'll talk about that in a second as well. Again, a copy of it in your pack and on your website. So there are sample assessment materials that go along with this qualification. Those are the ones that kind of come out originally when the qualification is new. What's nice is that now this qualification is in this year was its 6th year of external examinations. So it's now starting to build up a really nice bank of past papers, especially with the fact that there are 2 assessment windows every year. So there's November's and June assessments. So actually, you're in a really lovely position where, as a teacher looking to deliver this content and looking to understand the types of assessment or the types of questions these students are going to be asked, you now have a good amount of that content available to you. So those SAMs are great. They're prepared by the examiner, by the person running the course, and are a really nice way of understanding how this is all going to get done. But yeah, as time has gone by, it's built up that database of past papers for you, and that's important, especially in a subject like ours where content changes, where things move on very quickly. That it doesn't take long for some of the language, some of the terminology, perhaps even some of the technology in the specification to be superseded, to still be relevant in the real world, but to be superseded a little bit. And we'll talk about how to cope with that later on. But what we're trying to do with the qualification is to keep it relevant, especially with the technology qualification. And so it's important that your students are being made aware of technological changes as they happen. I think for those of you who were or weren't or struggled to get onto or didn't get onto or tried to get onto the sessions that were happening on Monday during the AWS, during the Amazon Web Services outage, I think that's a classic example of how our subject, above anything else, ahead of any other subject, requires us to be up to date, requires us to be flexible, requires us to be aware. It's the number of times I've been talking about a subject in ICT or computer science, and something has happened in the news that week or that day that has been technologically relevant. Um, you know, certainly there was the AWS shortage, so outage on Monday, which I will be talking to my students about on when we go back from after half term. It was announced yesterday, for example, in the UK here, that the Jaguar Land Rover cyber attack, which happened a little while ago and has been rolling on, is looking to be the most expensive cyber attack in the UK history. I think it's estimated to have cost £1.3 billion. And so what's great about our subject is that it's moving on all the time. I'm going to, again, the point I made on Monday is that, if you are a French teacher, then you could go back 150 years and you could say bonjour, je m'appelle, and somebody would understand it. We don't have that luxury in ICT. And I think that's what makes it an amazing subject to teach. And I think I know that I can see on the chat that Tim's put in the chat how to find out how many students have sat this subject. We, as an option subject in many schools, we do face that challenge of keeping our numbers up. I think somebody asked in the previous on Monday, what's the plan to increase the uptake at GCSE and ICT? And the simple answer to that is you need to be the champion of your subject in your school. Where have you got control? You've got control in your school, and so how are you being the champion of your subject? Certainly, that's my as we head towards in the UK the options window when students will be starting to make their choices as to what subjects they're going to take at GCSE. You just have to be the champion that your subject needs and deserves. So how did I get onto that? Oh, that was it. Okay, so sample assessment materials there originally. You now have a really nice bank. You'll be able to see some of the progression of technology through it, but stay up to date. Okay, stay up to date. And follow the specification at the same time. They're not contradictory, but they are. It is sometimes a challenge. Okay, so let's have a little bit of a look at the content overview for paper one. And again, if anybody has any questions about this, stop and ask. I've gone with I've not gone with the sub bullet points on this one, or else I'd have had hundreds and hundreds of slides. But I've kept it reasonably simple. So, topic one, digital devices. Very much, I think what's nice about this qualification is that all the fundamentals of ICT are in here. Types of, as you said, types of digital devices, features, software, peripherals, store. Okay, some real fundamentals. But it's not afraid to just kind of push the students a little bit and throw a little bit of what might be considered computer science at them, and I think that's really important. I think the two, it's interesting. I was asked previously whether there was any value in students doing both ICT and GCSE. Sorry, both ICT and computer science at GCSE. It's a tricky one, and it's obviously on a case-by-case basis. But I think that there's a huge amount of value in both. And I suppose it's almost, you can see the benefits of doing two and the benefits of only doing one if the two are available, and often that ends up being a school decision. I know, for example, some schools won't let students do business studies and economics. I think a lot of schools would frown at students doing ICT and computer science, but I think they are sufficiently different here that they do test a fundamentally different set of skills. The practical stuff for this ICT, as we'll see, is digital literacy, whereas obviously the practical stuff for computer science is programming. So there you go. I went off on a tangent again. I don't think there's any chat. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so next one is connectivity, obviously networks. And again, just having to understand types of digital communication, how and why types of digital communication are chosen, how to connect to a network, a little bit of internet stuff in there, benefits of using a LAN, and how to secure data on a network, including the internet. So some nice stuff about cybersecurity in there. Again, really relevant considering they still haven't worked out what the AWS outage was caused by. Would we be surprised if it was some kind of cyber attack? Probably not. So yeah, there's always room for discussion about what's going on in the real world. Okay, so next one, operating online. I will say that when you are doing your planning, I wouldn't take the number of bullet points in a topic as an indication of how much time it's going to take to do that topic. This has got 9 bullet points. I wouldn't suggest that it means it's going to take twice as long as one that's got 4 or 5. Often, the bullet points can be either very specific. I think some of these are quite specific. Online working from home. So don't try and don't judge your planning on just these ones. There's the sub bullet points as well. But there you go. Operating online, and I think it's this kind of topic in the qualification that we need to be banging the drum about with our senior leadership. At a time when, well, it's been this way for a while, but at a time when we live our lives online. For goodness sake, we're having this, we are doing this professional development online, and the inherent value in a student studying this GCSE, almost for this topic alone, is huge. If I was being asked to champion this subject in my school, and I was asked by the SLT to justify why they should be pushing this qualification with their students, I think I'd be showing them this topic, and I'd be talking them through the digital literacy stuff for paper 2, and we'll talk about why that's important. And I'd be really interested to find out people's thoughts about that when we get to it. But yeah, I mean, that topic 3 is almost the summary of how they're going to live their lives over the next. Well, it's how we all live our lives now, and it's certainly the number of our students right now who will be either hybrid working, remote working, is significant and growing. So yeah, I think if anybody wants to argue that they don't feel that there's a value in GCSE ICT, and I've had that conversation with members of senior leadership in the school and with other HODs of option subjects who are trying to push their subject ahead of mine, showing them this kind of information and what the students are going to gain from the qualification is huge. I will step off my soapbox for a second in regards to banging the drum for GCSE ICT computer science, but no doubt I'll get back up on it again in a second. Okay, again, so this is kind of an indicator or an example of what I was talking about before. So topic 4, online goods and services. In theory, this is what, a third of the length of topic 3. I wouldn't assume that. Okay, again, you need to dive into it a little bit more. It's probably going to be shorter, but don't assume that if topic 3 takes a term that you're going to be able to rattle off topic 4 in 2 weeks. Okay. And then we'll come on to the content overview for paper 2. So those first 4 topics are paper 1, and we'll talk about how those are going to be assessed in a second. But for paper 2, this is the more practical stuff that they're going to learn to do. So there we go. So applying information and communication technology. So software applications, data and information, using software applications and reviewing outcomes. Again, a couple of those are quite, I wouldn't say vague, but you're going to have to drill down on the specification into what those actually mean. And once you get into the specification, you'll see that it's actually laid out really, really nicely. And then software skills themselves. So word processing, database management, spreadsheet, web authoring, presentation, graphics, and file management. I'm hoping we're going to. I'd really like to have a discussion about this actually, because it's very. I think it's very telling, or let me. Okay. I think we assume, and everybody assumes, because our students, the young people in our schools, our learners, because they spend so much time on technology, I think as educators, from your assistant across to the head of school, we assume digital literacy in our students. We assume they're digitally literate. We assume that they can just pick up a device and use software proficiently. I am frequently surprised, not surprised. I'm frequently disappointed, surprised because I'm not surprised because it happens so often, at how illiterate students across all age groups are in these skills, in word processing, in spreadsheets, in web author, in all these kind of things that are the reading, writing, and arithmetic of the 21st century, and yet they don't know how to sit down and put together a proper Word document. They certainly don't know how to even do some basic database management. They aren't aware of formulas and functions and graphs and data validation and conditional formatting and VLOOK and all these. They're not aware of those in spreadsheets. They're not aware how to put together some content on a website, how to transition on presentations. They're just not aware of it. Now, there is obviously a whole debate around AI as to the importance of some of these things, but unless they know what's possible, they can't possibly use AI in a way to enhance it. So I'd be really interested, and please put it in the chat, just if you want to summarize your experience, I suppose, of the levels of digital literacy students have in these areas. I've recently started at a new school, and the first thing that I'm doing is with our year 9 is we start the year with a course on improving their digital literacy skills, so that they are proficient at word processing for English lessons, so that they can build spreadsheets for science to analyze data, so that they can put a nice presentation together for just about any subjects. It's we have assumed, I think, that this generation is digitally literate, whereas actually they are, I think it's probably digitally frequent, if that makes sense. They spend so much time on their devices, but not doing the stuff that will serve them really, really well. Like I always introduce the spreadsheets topic with basically saying, look, you're going to go into a workplace and you're going to come across a spreadsheet that somebody's built to do something, and you're going to, with a bit of spreadsheet literacy, you're going to be astonished at how inefficient that spreadsheet is, and you're going to fix it for them, and you're going to look like some kind of magician, and you're going to get yourself a name for somebody who can get stuff done well and can fix it. But yeah, it's they're fantastic at TikTok, and they're fantastic at Reels and Snapchat, and but the stuff that's going to set them up really well, they struggle with. Okay, and I think it's something we've done as educators. We've just kind of assumed that because they are on a device all the time, they are digitally literate. I think I saw somebody on the forum the other day say they're not digitally literate, they're digitally frequent. Yeah, they're on it all the time, but they don't know what they're doing with it. So yeah, but yeah, Basmi, yeah, it's amazing how again I was at a school previously in Singapore. The school I was at in Singapore did the IB, and we used to have a quite significant number of students arrive at the start of sixth form to do the IB, and the number of students that we had to basically run sessions for to build their Word, spreadsheet, presentation, digital literacy skills up so that they could do the stuff in the IB lessons that the parents that the it was crazy. Harinder, yeah, the number of students who ask me they can't use Canva, yeah, I think, yeah, I agree. It's interesting. It depends, and this will come down to course delivery and to your decisions. But actually, are we teaching them to use? Again, this has been my philosophy for an awfully long time. Are we teaching them to use specific software packages such as Microsoft Word, so Microsoft 365, sorry, or are we teaching them how to learn new packages? And I hope you see the difference in that. If we're teaching them to use Microsoft 365, then it can be as simple as press this button, then press this button, then press this button, then press this button. Okay. I think trying to get it as much as right. This piece of software is capable of doing this, 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 and this. Here's what your menu system looks like. Here's what your options are. Here's what all these things mean. Now can you go and find it? Okay. Because, and I give this speech quite often, at some point they're going to go into a workplace, they're going to go into somewhere, and they're going to be sat in front of a piece of software they've never seen before. If they've got the skill to upskill themselves in software because they've developed an exploration technique in that software, that's going to be amazing for them. Okay, but yeah, again, Canva's great. I mean, Canva's been around a while. Yeah, it's taken a real leap forward. It's been one of the platform that I think has really pioneered nice use of AI inside their platform. But they look at the buttons and can't work out what the buttons mean. It's a really interesting point, Randy, in that you and I would assume that, okay, go to Canvas and look, it seems reasonably obvious, but to a lot of the students, it isn't anymore. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that before we move on? I know I've talked about that a lot, but I think it's really, really important. I think, especially as an option subject, it's really important that we are able to speak truth to the powers in our schools and say, look, this is a vitally important subject. You know, students who are going to take this GCSE ICT are going to be just better placed than people who don't. Does anybody have anything else I want to add on that before we move on? I know I've talked a lot. I know I've banged on it about a little bit, but I think it's really important. I think especially if you're perhaps new to a school or new to the subject or new to the qualification, or I know that what happened. I know we are facing a global shortage of international of ICT and computer science teachers. So you may be on this meeting right now. Yeah, it is. I'll come back to that in a second. You're on this right now because you're looking to deliver the GCSE ICT. It may be you're the person in your school who was seen as being digitally literate and you had some space on your timetable, so they've asked you to do it. Okay, that's not unusual. The first school I went into to do my teacher training, again, goodness me, 20 years ago now, the ICT teacher was actually the philosophy teacher. They'd cancelled philosophy. The way education works in the UK, they were struggling. They couldn't really fire him. So they just said, well, look, you're reasonably good with a computer. You can just teach ICT instead. Okay. Yeah, the save icon still being a floppy disk is fascinating, Zesha. Have you ever asked them what it actually is? I have a little box of floppy disks, and when I'm talking in computer science lessons about magnetic storage or storage capacity or the progress of storage capacity, Moore's law and all that kind of thing, I will bring out a floppy disk and I'll show them. And occasionally one of them will go, "That looks like the save icon." Yeah, but I think the interesting thing about the save icon still being a floppy disk is that I almost think it's not a floppy disk anymore. It's just the save icon. The number of people who see it and think, 1.44 megabytes of content. I can flip the little switch to make it readable or writable. I can still hear the sound of it going into an A drive and go, and making that there's fewer and fewer of us. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I also inform my students that ICT, 100%. It's ultimately it's one of those subjects where if you're doing a GCSE in ICT, and then if you go on to do it at level 3 at post 16, there's a good chance that the stuff you're doing in those lessons, you're going to directly do that in a job when you go into it. You know, whether it's building, whatever it is, any of these experiences, putting together a decent Word document. It's exactly what you're going to be doing if you're going to be sat in a job. Okay, no matter what level of job you're at. But yes, thanks. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that before we move on? Okay, we'll keep going. But again, if suddenly something pops in your head, please put it on there. Content coverage. Um, Again, I of course I don't know who I'm talking to here. I'm not really. I don't know you all personally. I don't know what your experience is with this. But my advice would be, when it comes to content coverage, is be deliberate. Be very deliberate about it. Take time to sit down with the specification and use your experience, whether it's extensive or whether you're just kind of working it out, um, to timeline your delivery of the qualification. It's really, really important. So there's a couple of things that are worth knowing. One, obviously, you've got the specification. On the website, there are some great resources on how to do this. There's some schemes of work. There's some really good stuff on there. On a almost on a you can see it on a lesson by lesson basis, showing you how to do it. Obviously you'll know your scenario. It says lesson one, lesson two. That's fine. It depends on whether you've got 40-minute lessons, whether you've got 1 hour lessons, whether you've got half an hour lessons. I know there's a huge variety out there. But I would say, and this is the advice that I've given and I've followed as a head of department now for years, is that don't just kind of start and hope that you keep up, okay, or hope that it's going okay. Be deliberate in your planning. So the stuff on the right hand side of that slide is some of the examples that are on the website. I've included on the bottom left hand side the Gantt chart that I put together for that's for my current school actually. And it's for that's I'll put it on there because it's for the GCSE computer science. It just happens to be the one I had screenshot. And as you can see, I've split the whole thing down into sub sections for each of the main specification points. And I've just kind of looked at it and known from experience that I think, okay, this is going to take an amount of time. And basically, I've split it into weeks. Okay. If you're wondering, but it's supposed to be a nice color pattern, that's fine. If you're wondering why the ones at the top are black, it's because there's two of us delivering the course. We deliver half each, and the chap who was delivering the course has been well, we both marked them off as black. And I thought I'd change them both back to red so it was nice colours, but I left it. He basically left it in as black. So, and you can see I did this a few weeks ago. Yeah, but yeah, the simple question: how do I ensure I cover all the content? Is be deliberate about it. And be honest. If you fall behind, have a plan to catch up. If you get ahead, take some time to reflect, or you might want to keep going. As you can see as well, I've built in a little bit of time towards the end of each year for preparation for end of year exams. But that's something that's very much about your teaching style and about how much time you have in your school. But it just comes back to be deliberate. Be deliberate about it. Does anybody have any questions? Again, I said that because there were some people who will be like, of course, that's obvious. But I know there are some people here who will either be either heads of department or standalone ICT teachers. We are, unfortunately, we are often one of the smaller departments in the school. And if you are in a small school, you may be the only ICT teacher or the only computer science teacher in your school, which means that you're having to do this yourself. So be it. Okay. But again, if you're new to this, be deliberate. Be deliberate with it. That's my advice. So just a quick thought experiment, I suppose. Um, This qualification came out in 2017. And the specification was obviously would have been written in the kind of the year running up to that release date. So 2016, 2017. So let's just think about for a second about a common digital device such as a smartphone. Okay. Again, this is me. Don't know my audience, but I want you to just kind of try and remember the capabilities of the smartphone that you had 10 years ago. Okay. Of what it could do, and then compare it to what the smartphone you currently have now can do. Okay, because as we saw in the content overview, one of those specification points is digital devices. Okay, so I think it's fair to say that the kind of questions that you might be able to ask about smartphones now has changed significantly to what you could ask 5, 10 years ago. A lot of the questions will have a case study based around them, and things that you could, things that a certain case study would have eliminated. There might have been certain case studies 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that would have eliminated a smartphone as a valid device for employment in that case study. Now might not be the case. Okay. So does anybody have any thoughts about this? The kind of what do you think's? I mean, for me, I'm old. I suggest probably older than most. Um, I still remember the phones that I could only store 50 text messages on. I remember the first um, inverted commas smartphone I had was one that you slid it and the keyboard came out, and the storage capacity on it was such that I could store 2 songs on it. Okay, so I basically have to choose my 2 songs for the day, plug the phone in, use the phone as a folder, drag and all that kind of stuff. Whereas now, it's phenomenal what they can do. Um, so does anybody? So let's have a think for a second. The kind of questions that could be asked around smartphones today, or the kind of scenarios that could be suggested for smartphones today that couldn't have been earlier. Let me, I think the next slide shows a kind of example of this. So there you go. So this is one about Kiki's smartphone can be used to provide Sarah's tablet computer with an internet connection. And it basically asks to label the content. It's I mean, nowadays, I think we'd be talking more about 5G, perhaps. The connectivity options are similar but not the same. You would have perhaps, I remember reading one a long time ago about a guy who'd used his, and this is again 10 years ago, a guy who'd used his smartphone as almost as a modem for his laptop and got charged a huge amount of money for it. So yeah, I think we need to make our students aware of the latest technology, because I don't think it's unfair for the specification for the exam to ask something relatively straightforward. We owe it to the students to keep up. So Kiki's to provide her tablet computer with an internet connection. What's the first thing that pops into anybody's head when it's about using using her tablet computer? Sorry, when it's providing her tablet computer with an internet connection. What assumption has been made about tablet computers when this question was written, I suppose, is my question. So she's having to use a smartphone to get internet connection. What's it assumed about her tablet computer? Anybody want to chip in? Yeah, correct, Pastor. Um, it wasn't unusual. It was, I mean, again, I don't have to go back that long that you were provided with a laptop at school, and it didn't come with an NIC. It didn't come with a wireless network interface card. Okay, it was you were given a dongle, yeah, or a SIM card, exactly. Yeah. Nowadays, that a lot of the devices have got 4G, 5G. You go into the computer shops, and these, it would be assumed that if you have got a some kind of portable device, of course it's going to have its own the ability to connect to a network. Of course it is. Okay. Um, and so just being aware that those things have changed. Um, I looked at the so I think what these figures I'll tell you what I was going to say. Yeah. So I think the interesting thing is that's still possible. Okay, we still kind of you can still use mobile hotspotting, um, but as the exception rather than the rule in that situation now. Um, yeah, so I wonder if that question popped up again now, it would be slightly confusing to students because they'd be thinking, well, why can't she just connect her device? Surely her device just connects. Okay. Um, and again, I think the sign of how ubiquitous internet and Wi-Fi is that I was having a conversation with my is year 13s actually who are doing an IT qualification, and I was having to explain to them that internet isn't free as such. A lot of the times they'll be able to log on for free, um, but it's they just thought, well, I can just get internet wherever. Oh, it's free all the time. At home, it's not, and actually you pay through a plan. And often, if you log on to a shopping center or an internet or an airport, they're probably selling your data because they've got cookies on your device. Yeah, so Zishan, yeah, the Internet of Things, I think, is a really interesting one for this. In that nowadays, you could almost replace tablet computer with fridge, or how draw a diagram show how Kiki's smartphone can be used to manage Zara's fridge's internet connection. Would almost be a more relevant question. Do you see what I mean with that? I hope you see what I mean with that. In that, I think that question, whilst it could still be relevant, is it can be tricky. Zishan, so an issue we have with our students is that when you say their reliance on mark schemes, do you mean that they are accessing the question papers and the mark schemes independently of you, and then basing their questions in your current assessments on the older questions? Um, Yeah, okay. So they've gone and found a mark scheme, and they've memorized the mark scheme, and then they've regurgitated what the mark scheme said and not looked at the modern context of the question. It is again, that's a great point, Zishan. Yeah, it is. Sorry, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Then Zishan. Yeah. Um, the other thing to be aware of in regards to mark schemes is the number of students who don't know, for example, that for this qualification, 2019 was the first um, external exams. Okay, they won't know that, so they'll be looking at they'll want to do as many past papers as they can. So they'll be looking at exams from 2015, 2016. Like I do the new Edexcel. Yeah, I do the GCSE computer science, which is a 2020 qualification. And so they are looking at stuff from 2018, and it's not wrong, but it may not be relevant to what's going to be asked in the exams they're going to do. Feels like pulling teeth when we have to explain why they are not now not quite right. Yeah, I think it's a great point. I think if they've learnt it and they understand it, then it's a bit of a heartbreak for them to be said, actually, I love the fact you understand that, but I'm going to have to we're going to have to get rid of that. We're going to have to jettison that thing that you know, because you might not need it. Okay. Or I suppose who are we to say that? But um, yeah, it's in some ways it's why there's websites out there, isn't it, that they can easily get onto, which just give all of the past papers, um, and it's unmoderated content. I mean, again, if we're talking about past papers, I try and avoid using past papers as revision or as content or as knowledge development until way into the second year of the course. My ideal is that I don't start looking up full past papers with them until basically we're getting ready for the full exams. Of course, they'll have done assessments and they'll have had practice with individual questions and question technique and assessment objectives. But the skill of going through a full past paper, I think, can only really be of significant value until we've covered all the content anyway. Yeah, I mean, Sherry, you're right. The mark scheme ultimately is just for the examiners. The mark scheme is developed so the examiners can mark the exam. Obviously, they're then published so that we as teachers can use them. But I would heartily agree with trying to keep the students away from the mark scheme. I think I would share why they've got the marks, but the skill is us putting it into language that they understand. Okay. Let's keep going. I've just missed another chat. Sorry. Marble, that's a great question. I'll be honest, that's way outside my my realm of responsibility. I don't have anything to do with the textbook. I'm hoping that if Tim or Leon are still on the call, they might. There you go. There you go. I was about to say, hopefully, if Tim's on the call, he can answer that one for you. Tim is on the call, and he has answered that one for you. There you go, Marvel. Okay. Great. Let's go on to the next one. So, a little bit about assessment objectives. Some people will teach these very, very explicitly. Other people will not. I think it's important the students know about it. They know that there are levels of knowledge demonstration that they need to be able to do. I don't think it's unhealthy for them at all that they know what these things mean. Predominantly so that when you are starting to give them, for example, if you have an assessment and you want to give them feedback on it and you want to be able to sort of tell them how much time they should spend answering a question, you can point to the number of marks the question is, some of the command taxonomy, which we'll talk about in a second, and then say, look, guys, this is an AO1 question. AO1 being demonstrate knowledge. So multiple choice questions are going to be AO1 questions. Defining key terms, AO1 questions. I think it's a really useful bit of vocabulary to have as a shortcut to guiding them on how to answer things. And then we go to AO2, which is apply knowledge, understanding of skills. So maybe some longer, maybe a 3-marker question. So instead of just identify what a LAN is, or define the term LAN, you would then go on to so and so is running a small business. Explain why a wireless LAN would be a perfect setup for them. And then the analyze and evaluate is so and so uses a wireless LAN to manage their network. Discuss the advantages and disadvantages for them of running a wireless LAN, and then they don't know that has some context about them having an office and then having some people out on the road doing work elsewhere. Okay, but I think it's a really useful shortcut when you're trying to teach exam technique on how to get them to answer those questions. When it comes to the questions, okay, there are ways of the students knowing what is being assessed. So the top one, for example, there we go. So often bold will be used to try and kind of drag their attention as a text cue to how they should answer that question. So and again, certainly when I'm putting together assessments for my students, I use this all the time. I think it would almost be remiss of me not to. So state two, bold is used to show how many responses are needed. Again, the number of times that they'll only put one. So I'll not only, I'll end up, drawing a circle around the two with an exclamation mark next to it. Two other, that will usually because there's been an example given in the question and they need to know what not to use. Again, if they the number of students who will put the example from the question in their answer, so just put a big circle around other. This is a really interesting one that gets missed a lot. Describe one risk to John. Okay, that means that screams of please use the context of the question. We'll see when we come to some of the questions, the marking examples, that they will give a good generic answer, but they won't link it to the context of the question, and that will cost them marks. Okay. Yeah. And then the last one is discuss the factors that John should be considering before doing X and doing Y. So those words actually wouldn't be underlined in the question. I don't think there's ever any underlining in questions. I haven't seen that for years and years, but I don't think there's any more. Anyway, so that's kind of us having to train them to say, look, this is the kind of thing that your answer should include. Okay. And that just comes down to, again, when you do your assessments and you do your feedback and you do your, I always do a post-mortem, as it were, at the end after an assessment. And I talk about exam technique as I do as much about anything else. Just so you are aware of the kind of weightings here. So across the GCSE, roughly a quarter of the marks will come from AO1. Roughly half will come from AO2, and then another quarter from AO3. And as it says there, so of that 20, roughly 25% for AO3, 15% will be for analysis and 10% will be for evaluation. Again, it's just so that you, as much as anything else, so that you know when you're putting together assessments for them to test this kind of stuff, just the kind of balance you should be trying to achieve. And there's a split across the papers. Apologies, that doesn't maybe not quite as visually friendly as I intended. But as you can see, for obvious reasons, there's much less of an emphasis on AO1 for paper two. Paper two is a lot of application of skills, as you all know, or as I'm hoping you know. And so there's far more of AO, far more of a balance of AO2 in the paper two. Okay, so quick look at the examination structure. There's two exams, both are external. As I said, this was first assessed back in May and June. And this is based on those first four topics: digital devices, connectivity, operating online, online goods and services. It's 50% of the whole thing. And I think it's pretty generous with time. My experience is that the hour and a half for the 100 marks, most students are okay with that. And if they have the access arrangements of the extra 25%, they usually cope with that pretty well as well. As it says, mixture of multiple choice, short and long answer questions. And we'll talk about ramping and how that happens in a minute as well. But yeah, available in the spec as well. Paper two, so 5 and 6. And this is much more about the application of those ICT and software skills. Again, it's half the exam. Again, 3 hours this time for 100 marks. And we'll talk perhaps a little bit about how to make sure that you as an exam centre are in a best place to give your students the best chance of success, just from a logistical point of view for these exams. And again, there's an examination window, okay? Again, just to help out with the logistics of it. Does anybody have any questions about that before we move on? What time have we got? I'm very conscious of the fact that's only 10 o'clock. Okay, we're just 2 minutes past the hour. Okay. There's a huge amount of work goes into making sure that these papers are fair and balanced and correct. There are I don't know if anybody's ever seen there's some very stringent but reasonable guidelines that come out from JCQ, the Joint Council of Qualification, about how exams are set, about the kind of questions that can be asked. Yeah, they have to be fair and they have to be. You can't kind of try and trick students. There's a whole load of guidelines and they're all reasonable. But yeah, so there's a paper written by the principal examiner. Papers are revised, recommendations. A second paper is written. Question paper evaluation committee goes through it with a fine-tooth comb. Again, studied by scrutiny. Again, it's really interesting. I've done some scrutiny and work in the past. Just you can see how much thought has gone into these papers. Okay. Almost certainly you're sitting there thinking, but mistakes happen. Yeah, they do. I think it's fair to say over the past few years, there have been mistakes on a couple of other exam boards. I don't remember the last time there was anything significant, or anything actually, that Pearson did wrong on their exams. I know it was a couple of years ago there was I can't remember what exam board was. They made quite a significant mistake on one of their computer science papers, but yeah, the Pearson process is very robust. So again, some of you here might be examiners as well. If you aren't, I would highly recommend it. The professional development it will give you, and the upskilling it will do in regards to the qualification will make you better placed to deliver this qualification. There's no doubt in my mind at all. Going through the process as an examiner, the standardization process, looking at how it's all put together, means that you can prepare your student better. It's just a fact. Okay. But so if you are interested in that, I would recommend going onto the Edexcel gateway, and if you have a login, and so I think on down on the left hand side somewhere they will say vacancies. I would highly recommend getting involved. It will significantly improve your ability to increase your students' chances of success. And I say that as somebody who'd been teaching the GCSE computer science for a good few years and became involved as an examiner and a team leader, and it made me way better at delivering the qualification. So I would highly recommend that. I highly recommend it. Does anybody have any questions about that before we move on about how it's? Oh, sorry, I didn't finish. Sorry. So yeah, 4 types of marks for paper 1. There's the e-pen, which is essentially it appears you as an examiner you log on and it appears on your screen, and you mark it digitally. You can put annotations on there and that kind of thing. Again, there's the 4 types: computer, clerical, graduate, expert. I think the computer one is for multiple choice only, I think. But I'd have to check that. I'm sure if Tim's listening, he could probably confirm that as well. And then obviously, depending upon the complexity of the question, it depends upon how at what level a person marks it. But the paper 2 from the printout is always marked by expert markers. It's a much more nuanced set of questions and therefore set of responses, and so that one is always done by expert markers. Does anybody have any questions about that, about the examiner role, or? No, apologies to those who can see me drinking my tea on camera, but obviously I'm talking a lot, and if I don't drink some tea, one, I wouldn't be British, and 2, my throat would have gone by now. Okay, so the exam paper and mark schemes. So definitely, definitely get hold of the instructions for the conduct of the examination, especially, predominantly actually, for the delivery of paper two. Um, and this is a process I would start now. Um, I would speak to your ICT department or your IT department, sorry. So as in the technical guys rather than the department, and I would give them this because there are some very clear guidelines on how this exam has to be administered um, in regards to computer availability, internet access, software access. Um, so that's something I would get onto early. Also, so that the early, I mean, ideally, and I don't know if anybody, there'll be people on this call now who are obviously getting ready to start the run up to mock exams and to read exams for year 11s. Ideally, you want to run your mock exam exactly as you would run your actual exam. You don't want the first time they sit down to do a paper two in full to be the first time that they've been in that environment with the either the dividers or the spacing in your computer room. So um, again, that's one of those things. It's well worth being really deliberate about. But if you haven't got hold of that already, the instructions for the conduct of the exams, get hold of it, okay, and make sure that there are no glaring omissions in your um, in your setup for delivering that exam. Again, these are pretty much common sense for all exams, but it's worth mentioning anyway. And it's always telling the students to make sure that they understand the instructions on the front of the paper. It's worth showing them that beforehand as well, just getting a past paper and making sure they understand the instructions. As I said before, it's always worth finding time to go through full past papers with them. Personally, I try and leave it as until we're on the run up to the actual exams, or maybe one before the mocks. But try and save those as late as you can if you're in the position to do that. Understand that I always remember, this next point always makes me chuckle. Understand that we always provide more than enough space. They don't need to fill everything up. No matter how many times you say that to some students, they still see it as a personal challenge to fill the space. So when I taught in the British School Muscat in Oman, I also taught business studies, and I had a lad who, no matter how often I told him he didn't need to fill the space, he filled the space, and he would waffle and he would waste time, and occasionally he overspilled and filled in more than the space, and his time management as a result in the exam was awful. Um, he would spend so much time overfilling the space in the early questions that he would run out of time at the end of the exam. It took me 18 months to kind of get him out of that habit. But yeah, just again, it's really good to sit with them with a paper and say, look, just make sure. Zishan, is it recommended to use bullet points for their responses? I wouldn't say it's recommended, but they're not going to get marked down for it. So here's the thing. As an examiner, okay, Harandi, I'll come to your questions in a second. As an examiner, every time you click the button to get your next script up, your main hope is this legible? Okay, is it easy for me to extract the knowledge they've demonstrated and give them the marks for it? Okay, if I'm in a situation where I'm having to go hunting through a block of text, right, to find the indicators of knowledge, it's trickier. I'm not saying that we don't do it, okay, but if it's a block of text, I think it does increase the chance of an examiner missing something that they could have been given credit for. Okay. I don't think it's a bad idea at all. For example, if a question is give 2 advantages and 2 disadvantages, to literally go bullet point advantages and then bullet point 2 advantages, and then bullet point disadvantages and then bullet point two disadvantages, rather than a block of text that the examiner has to go hunting through. Examiners are only human. It's yeah, it's a good idea. Okay, examiners are only human. It's and I don't, again, some of you may be examiners on here, but what happens is you tend to mark like 50 instances of a question at a time. Okay, and if you're having to go through just a block of text and extract the stuff, it's harder. It's harder to mark that kind of question. So Zishan, I think that's great advice. Okay, the clearer the writing is, and the nicer the layout is when it pops up on the examiner's screen. I'm not going to say that the marks are going to differ. That's not true. But for the examiner, it's going to be easier for them to find the marks. Okay. Yeah. So they're not going to get marked. I suppose the opposite answer is they're not going to get marked down for making it easier for the examiner to mark the question. I hope that makes sense. There was another question above. Harindi, no, they don't. I mean, again, for most, unless they have particularly large handwriting, for most students, if they've gone beyond this space, they've one of two things: either they've waffled, and they've not answered the question efficiently, or they've added stuff that wasn't needed. Again, I talk a huge amount with my students about conciseness. Okay, be concise, be accurate. Okay, make sure that you're using the technical language often and correctly, but try and be concise. It's not. I mean, again, I've done this, and this is one of the ways that I cure you better come and cure this business studies lad. In that, I would give him his answer back and say, right, that's 117 words. I want you to write it in 60, and then he'd hand it me back and say, great, now write it in 40. Okay, teaching them or coaching them to be concise and accurate. Yeah, is really, really important. And it just helps the exam. Again, I'll say again, examiners are only human. If you click your screen and a question comes up and it's beautifully laid out and the handwriting is nice, then you're in benefit of the doubt territory, probably. Okay. Whereas if it pops up on your screen and you're like, I don't know what that means. Okay. And there are words where you're like, I think it probably means this, but I'm not sure. Then as an examiner, you're thinking, right, if I give them the benefit of the doubt, but that's not what they actually wrote, is that fair? It's tricky. I think it's a reason, as you said, they are so writers have held the pen with their teeth. Yeah, I agree. Obviously, if they're doing that, you're then on a you're in access arrangements territory. Yeah, yeah. I think I have a number of students that, for example, in my year 12 class at the moment, they're doing the IT BTEC AAQ from Pearson, and I've already made recommendations that 2 of them should be doing everything on the laptop because I just can't read their writing. What was it? I'll just a couple more questions. Does spelling and handwriting count? So spelling and grammar, no. I think, and somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, I hope, that apart from English language and literature, it may only be English language actually, but I think now apart from English language, we're not, like JCQ has said, that we're not to mark down for spelling and grammar. Okay. So as long as when you read it, you can see what it means. It's almost like if it phonetically makes sense, even if the spelling is terrible, if I can read the sentence and know what they're saying, I can give them the mark for it. Okay. Yeah, so spelling and handwriting, spelling grammar, no. Handwriting only counts against them if it makes it illegible. If I can't work out what they've said, I can't. If they answered three reasons for a two-reason question and they got one wrong, do they get the mark? Or okay, no. So if the question says give two advantages for working from home, right? If they give two correct advantages and one wrong one, they'll get the mark for the two correct ones. I think it doesn't even. I don't think it even matters if the wrong one is first. I think um, most examiners would say, okay, well they've come up with two advantages here, so there's no negative marking up here. Okay, if it's asked for three reasons for something and they've given two legitimate ones and one that's phony, then they would get the credit for the two legitimate ones. So if that was a explain two reasons for X, and they gave three reasons, but one was wrong and two were explained nicely, they'd get all the marks for it. There you go. Thank you, Tim. Yeah, so no SPAD, but yeah, making sure that they correctly use technological terminology. I'm just scrolling down. Yeah, again, spot on from Tim. Yeah, the for P1 it's about accessory. For P2, for paper two, they're all going to use the computer, but for P1, that's about you sorting out access arrangements through your school, through your Senko or through your SEN department. Sherry, I don't think so. The guidance, I don't think the guidance has changed, but I think what examiners are looking for is positive indication of knowledge. Okay, I'll double check on that, Sherry, but I'm pretty sure that if they've given three and two are wrong, then I think you can give them the credit for it. But Sherry, I'll double check. I'll double check, and again, maybe if Tim's listening, he can advise on that. And I think it does differ for some papers. Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, right. Okay, yeah. If she's giving, I see. Sorry, I see what you mean. Yeah, yeah, yeah. If what they've done is they've just rolled the dice and put every possible response, then the examiner is then going to start saying, well, okay, look, you've scattergun this. Okay, I see what you mean. I think maybe to a certain extent depends on the type of question. Guys, I'll find out. I'll double check and I'll find out. Okay. Yeah, I've seen who when she's confused, she just she gives every right and wrong answer she can possibly think of, and then hopes that the examiner picks it out. I see what you mean. Okay. I'll double check, Josh, and I'll find out. There you go. I'm going to bring up my second laptop. We can. I'm going to have a quick look at the mark scheme. If anybody's got a mark scheme they want to have a look at. I'll have a look at the mark scheme and I'll find out what the most recent mark scheme says, and we'll move on, but I'll find out what the most current mark scheme says. There you go. That's the wrong one. Yeah, we'll move on and I'll see what the most recent one says. Okay. Who knew that we'd get all that out of one slide? Okay. I am trying to answer the chats as quick as we go. Yeah, Tim's found that one. I'm going to have a quick look at the 2024, but I think we're all probably hurrying to do this now. So let's double check this before we go any further. Mark scheme paper 1. So general marking guidance says all candidates, okay, fine. Mark schemes should be applied positively. Candidates must be rewarded for what they have shown they can do rather than penalised for omissions. All the marks on the mark scheme are designed to be awarded. Examiners should award full marks if deserved. Where some judgment is required, mark schemes will provide the principles by which mark schemes will be awarded. So there's nowhere on the guidance where it says that the order in which they've answered has an impact. If we just go on the mark schemes should be applied positively, that means that the order shouldn't matter. You know, if they've got 3 reasons, but 2 of them are correct, I suppose they rolled the dice, didn't they? I don't know if anybody else has been able to find the marking guidance, but I think there are. I'm thinking back to the last time I did the computer science examiner stuff. There are a couple. There's a couple of times where a question, the kind of question will really impact. You know, the order that they've written stuff will really impact. And so that does apply in that, but that will say that usually that will say that in the note. So, you know, for each question you have the question number, and then you have an answer, and then they'll either have like a do not accept or a note section. So if it is a situation where for that question you can only accept the first 2, it will say that. But the general marking guidance is, and I'll repeat it back, mark schemes should be applied positively. Candidates must be rewarded for what they have shown they can do rather than penalised for omissions. And, you know, omissions being not showing it or not showing it correctly. Does that? I hope that makes sense. Yeah, yeah, perfect. I'm looking at the June 2024 one now. Unless anybody wants to suggest a different interpretation of that, there you go. Okay, great. Okay, and thank you for the links, Tim. Thank you. Okay, so practical exam. Again, practice the practical. Ideally in the same room. I know that for some schools that's just not logistically feasible. If you're in a smaller school, it may be that you have one ICT suite, it's in use all the time, and so finding time to do it is difficult. But if possible, get them in the room, get them in the same seats. We now have a nice range of past papers with the data files available, so it should be possible to do a full mock exam in this scenario. Again, 3 hours is a huge amount of time to try and find in a busy school week, and you may have to do battle with your exams officer or with your SLT with that, but it's really, really important. Okay. Yeah, don't please avoid the situation where the first time they sit down to do a paper 2 is their actual paper 2. And as I said, make sure you've got the you've gone through the centre delivery document. Yeah, Sherry, I'm gonna jump back to the show. Yeah, so Sherry, it doesn't. So in the mark scheme, it doesn't say you must only give credit for the first 2 responses. You're absolutely right, Sherry. What it does say is it should be applied positively. Okay, so the fact it doesn't say about order, but does say about applying positively, means that if they have demonstrated one of the bullet points somewhere in their answer, you can give them the credit for it. Yeah. If they've written a block of text, so because the simple thing is if they've got 3 bullet points and the first one is wrong and the second 2 are right, then I suppose you're arguing, well, I can only give this the second one, I can't give the third one. But if the bullet points 2 and 3, so if their bullet point answers 2 and 3 address the bullet points in the mark scheme, then that's applying the mark scheme positively. The aim is to try and again, I've sat in the meetings where the consensus is we are looking for ways of giving the student the mark. Okay, if it's pretty harsh if they've clearly demonstrated they knew what it was about to penalise them just because of the order they wrote it. Again, we'll come back to your example, Sherry. If they've written 3 answers because those are the 3 they thought are right, but they were just unlucky that they wrote the wrong one first, is it fair that somebody who was lucky and wrote the wrong one last should get the 2 marks for the same amount of demonstrated knowledge? Sherry, does that make sense? Yeah, I think, ultimately, you look as an examiner, they're looking for reasons to give the marks rather than reasons to take them away. Okay, so mark schemes. Mark schemes are ultimately. Oh, okay, as in how to do the evidence file. Sorry, okay, yeah, I'll go back to it. I'm assuming there are quite a few people on here who've never delivered the paper 3 before, the paper 2 before. So, and this will take a lot of liaising with your centre manager, so with your exams officer. So before the exam, I think it's 72 hours before the window opens, I think. But your exams officer will know. Basically, they will get sent all of the materials, including the data files for the exam. So let's go through this in a little bit more detail, because I think this is often the bit that people are a little bit worried about. So every student must have a computer, so computer on a one-to-one basis. They must have all the relevant software on there, all the required software. Hopefully the software they've been using throughout the course, so word processing, data management, spreadsheets, something for web authoring, presentation graphics. It's as a centre, you need to make sure that they're not disadvantaged by the software. And then I would suggest that, and most IT departments will be able to help you with this, that you have, well, again, I'm going to tell you how we do it. We log the students onto the desktops with an exam user profile. That exam user profile is limited to it provides all the things they need, but only the things they need. There's no internet access. And often we will log them on as well. Okay. So they go in, they sit down at the computer, they're logged in. And when they log on, there will be you should have the folder of files required. Okay. Yeah, there you go. Again, as Tim said, they're all on if you go to the examinations resources on the website, for each exam series, there's all the papers, and then at the bottom, there'll be the zip files. Okay. Yeah, Tim's right. It does. Don't have the first time you're doing it as your actual real thing. So make sure that the the data files that are required are on the desktop computer or on the computer. I keep saying desktop because that's what I've been using recently. There's no, I don't think we specify. We just say computer. Again, previously we've used laptops. As long as the laptops are then follow the guidelines, that's okay. But they should basically be able to sit down, log on, the software's there, and then the files that they require to complete the paper 2 assessments are there too. So it might be a database file or a spreadsheet or a Word document or a presentation template. I think a couple of years ago it was a load of images of canal boats. They must be, as it says, sent. Again, I'm going to read just so we know it's got it in front of us. Centres must ensure that the data files are in a format accessible to each candidate, so that the correct file types. They should be downloaded, tested for compatibility with the software to be used, and then copied into each candidate's secure examination user area. So it may be just as simple as going around with a pen drive. Again, I've seen this happen. So the downloaded files are on a pen drive. You get one of your IT technicians to go around. They copy the files onto the desktop of that computer, and they are there. Okay. Again, I would also discuss with students where they're going to save stuff, how often they're going to save stuff, that kind of thing. Okay. But one of the important things is that data is only accessible from their from that desktop. Okay. We can't be putting it into a shared intranet folder. It must be on that desktop, and that desktop only accessible by that student. Let me have a look. Sorry. Yeah. And then they will have so data file downloaded. Make sure they've got sufficient storage. And then with the evidence file, let me quickly check I'm going to say this right. Well, the guidance is on the paper for a start. Let me just find the paper 2 here that I had up in front of me. So as it says at the start, I've got the wrong one up, sorry. So at the start, again, it will give them some instructions on what to do at the start. Again, you should have gone through this with them beforehand. Question paper, June 2024. Yeah. So it will say to them, I've just clicked on the wrong one. Goodness me, I'll pick the right one in a sec. Question paper 2 in June 2024. Yeah, so it says to them, look, please save this in your evidence folder. Okay. Trying to find the advice right at the start. So yeah, data files, evidence, car hire, presentation, hire costs. So there is an evidence file. Okay. I'm just bringing up the one I had before. Oh, it's on my other computer. But yeah, I think the evidence file basically says, look, it shows them where to put stuff. Okay, so the evidence file is expecting them to put stuff into certain places on that folder, on that file, so that it can be accessed by the examiner. I'm just digging out that one as well. Now let's do that one. Okay, I'll find it in a second. Yeah, there you go. So in there. So I realize it's on this computer, and I don't want to click anything else, otherwise, in case it stops sharing my screen. But yeah, and it's the same for a lot of these nowadays. So in their data files, there is a Word document called evidence.doc. Okay, and they as they follow the instructions on the question paper, and they fill stuff in. Okay. Which is why it's really important to have that run through, just to make sure that they are screenshotting it correctly. Again, what you're trying to make sure is that you're making it as easy as possible for the examiner. So I would talk to them about cropping of images, making sure that the images are cropped properly, that they are readable, that they're not having to do battle with tiny screenshots. I'm just looking at the next question. Oh, there you go. I was about to answer the one about WYSIWYG, but Tim's already answered it. Yeah, and Tim makes the point again. Please, please, please practice this. Okay. I think it's fair to say that almost unanimously, schools that struggle on the day with the real thing are almost always the schools that haven't had a go beforehand. Like it would terrify me to be going into the real exam having not had a run through before. Yeah, again, which is why as we head to, I know some schools will be some of you will be having mock exams before the winter break. Speak to your IT team now. Try and have one. Try and have one. But again, yeah, as Tim's given the links, the past exam years are on there. The guidance is on there. The data files are on there. It's all on there. Please go on there and double check. Right. So mark. Okay. So mark schemes. Does anybody have any questions about the practical exam before we move on to mark schemes? Because I'm now conscious of the fact that it's 40 minutes past the hour. Okay, we'll move on. So the mark scheme is there ultimately for examiners, or predominantly for examiners, but obviously it's an incredibly useful tool for you as teachers. It can be confusing for the students, and as somebody's already mentioned, can prove counterproductive if they've got their hands on the wrong ones. But it basically gives general marking guidance, the correct answers, allocation of marks, the marking points, and any additional guidance. If a question has got additional guidance or additional notes or more information, it's usually for a really, really good reason. Again, having sat in the I used to help moderate the mark scheme for the GCSE computer science, and the level of discussion, the intricacy of discussion in when we pour over those answers and what we can and can't accept is significant. Okay, there's a huge amount of thought put into it, because again, what the principal examiner and the examination team are trying to do is make sure that if a candidate has provided relevant knowledge, understanding, or skills, they should be rewarded for it. Okay, and at the same time, if they've done something that's demonstrably wrong, they don't get the credit for it. So please, please, please make sure that if there is on the question, if there is something like a do not accept answer or an extra notes section, that you pay really good attention to it. I mean, I'm looking at example for here. Things that can and can't be accepted for what a MAC address is. So accept MAC cannot be so. For example, we were talking about a MAC address being hard coded into a network interface card, and it says, look, accept that MAC cannot be changed for hard coded, because it's a clear demonstration of understanding. But you can't accept that it's more secure. Okay, so it's just from experience, the examination team knowing the kind of things that students will and won't say, and what is and isn't acceptable, starting with the spec and leading through everything else. So yeah, they're really great for you. I've never been convinced that it's a good idea to share them with the students. I've never worked out whether it's a net positive or a net negative, but there you go. Okay. So yeah, lots of ways. So again, they go a bit more about mark schemes. So different types of questions, pretty straightforward. Multiple choice, whether select one of four. I don't think there are. Well, again, that's a read question. I think on the whole, it's a one of four. I don't think there are many questions where they can select more than one answer. But again, that's just making sure they read the question. Again, points based. So look, multiple choice points based. There's very little wriggle room really. But yeah, so individual marking points are worth independent marks, and then you've got your level based questions, which are the longer ones, the 8 markers. And the markers are just allocating marks on a more holistic approach. I.e., I've read the whole thing. What content is there in there indicative of knowledge? How well have they evaluated or analysed? And then we'll look at the levels in a second. So again, so just question types. So there you go. So there's a multiple choice. Anybody want to answer the question? Which one of these will provide the strongest password? Put in the chat now, A, B, C, or D, and tell me why. So there's usually distractors. Often maybe there's one that's wrong but not ridiculous, and 2 that are plausible but not correct. Anyone want to suggest which is the strongest one? Or is nobody going to jump on that one? Correct, it's B. Okay. Anybody want to tell me why it's B? What's he not included in the password for B? Perfect. Yeah, he's not. He's not. Yeah. Anybody who knows his name is halfway to guessing what his password is. Perfect. Okay. Again, that's an interesting one. There's a when we talk about cybersecurity, we have to emphasize the point that the weakest part of any system is the human. I don't know if anybody's seen it. It's available on YouTube. There's a really, really interesting film called Lo and Behold. What's it called? Lo and Behold, something of the digital age. One says Lo and it's called Lo and Behold, Reveries of the Connected World. It's by Werner Herzog. It's a really interesting film about cybersecurity and a lot of the negative impacts of technology on our life and hacking. There's a couple of really interesting interviews with a guy called Mitnick, Kevin Mitnick, who was like the world's #1 hacker. Yeah, Lo and Behold, Reveries of the Connected World. That's one that I've shared with my students on more than one occasion when I wanted to discuss cybersecurity and the impact of our online lives. Anyway, I'm off topic again. Right, so multiple choice, there you go, nice and straightforward. And then we got your points based. Again, usually, certainly from an examiner's point of view and from your point of view, easy to mark as a teacher. And again, they're just demonstrating a bit of knowledge. So I think was it Chiro was asking about whether they could be bullet pointed. Yeah, if I was asked to give 2 advantages of using a wireless method to connect the smartphone, one, I'd be thinking a little bit old. Okay, fine. It's a slightly old question, obviously, but again, the reason this is an older question, you can tell, the advantages to Kiki of using a wireless method to connect the smartphone is because you're saying it's better than cables. It's cheaper than cables. How many of our students nowadays would even think for a second that you would connect a smartphone to the internet using a cable? None of them would. Okay, but there you go. Perfectly fine to bullet point those. Perfectly, yeah. Explain one benefit. Again, I don't think there'd be any problem in saying bullet point the benefit and then explain why it's a benefit. As in the smartphone being able to connect to multiple devices. So you mean wireless, so Wi-Fi connected to your hub and then Bluetooth connected. So I mean, you're right, Josh. And again, Joshua, sorry. And again, that's a demonstration of how we need to make sure we are up to date with the content. That's an older question. I think nowadays it would be, I can't think what it'd be, a beer around that one. Yeah, I can't think. I have an update question around wireless method for a cell phone. Joshua, explain what you mean by that. So, what is it? What about it being able to connect to multiple devices? As in the smartphone being able to connect to other smartphones, or the smartphone receiving wireless signal from multiple places? Okay, so yeah, the fact you're having to ask those questions, Josh, I think shows that that's a slightly dated question. I don't think you could ask that question and have those answers as relevant answers anymore. We just wouldn't teach our students nowadays that one of the options for connecting your smartphone to the internet would be a cable. Okay, because all of those advantages are about not having a cable. So you can move around, does not have to connect to cables. There's no cost of cables, no trading wires. That shows that question's age. It's just there as a demonstration of points that can be answered. But I think you would talk about now, give two advantages to Kiki of having a what would you have? Of having a VPN on her laptop, or give two advantages to Kiki of having a VPN on her smartphone when connecting to a wireless to a public wireless server, that kind of thing. Okay. And then these last ones are levels-based questions. So you discuss the impact of VLEs on learners. Whenever it's discussing the impact, they should be looking for the positives and the negatives. I would always try and have a balance of both. I wouldn't pile in with six or with six of my marks for positives and two for negatives. Try and be balanced. Certainly what I tell my students is if they had this question, I'd ask them to have an introductory sentence explaining what a VLE is. Then I'd ask them to bullet point 3 advantages with an explanation for each one, bullet point 3 disadvantages with an explanation each one, and then probably just put a little summary in saying, on balance, it is advantageous for students to have access to VLEs because, okay? Again, that comes back to you as the educator talking to them about how to structure those answers. But for that one, I'd be saying, okay, I always tell my students, define the key term in the question. Discuss the impact of VLEs on learners. Okay, a VLE is a virtual learning environment that allows learners to access lessons, resources, and teachers remotely. Great. The advantages are this, the disadvantages are this. On balance, I think that VLEs are a good thing because, and then they'd summarize a couple of their points. I think for an 8 marker, that again, 2 lines, then a break, then a paragraph, then bullet points. Set it out nicely so that the examiner stands a chance of being able to get out the information correct well. So they'll get again, this is marked holistically, but I always start at if I'm marking these, I always start at the top and say, right, is there any reason I can't give them 8 points? Have they gone for a range of different points to consider both points of views, advantages and disadvantages? Are most of the points they've made supported by evidence? I.e., have they used the knowledge and understanding they have of that key term, or have they just made stuff up? Have they linked their discussion to the scenario? And again, will it show good focus and organization? 2-line introduction, bullet points for advantages, bullet points for disadvantages, conclusion. I'm doing all these hand signals. I can never remember whether you can just see my screen or you can see me on my camera as well. I think you can probably see my camera as well. In fact, let me do that. Can you see me? Maybe not. I don't know. But there you go. Anybody got any questions about the types of questions? I realise I said the word question twice there. Okay, those are the hardest ones to mark. But there you go. Well, a bit they would if they then. I mean, look, they could structure it beautifully. If what they've written is nonsense, they're not going to get the 8 marks. What I'm saying is that I think providing them that structure means that if they know the content, they're more likely to get the marks because it's structured better. Yeah, of course, without yeah. So it's not that that is not a Pearson mandated structure. That's just me speaking from doing this for more years than I care to remember. That asking my students to do it that way allows them to organize their thoughts, allows them to demonstrate knowledge, and allows them to go a long way to meeting the guidelines that go in the band 3 descriptor. Yeah. Again, I cannot tell you how nice it is as an examiner when you click on the screen and the answer pops up and it's nicely organized. It's heaven. Okay. It means that it's so much easier to mark and find out what they knew. Okay. So again, I'll say again, that's not Pearson saying that's how it must be structured, but that's, in my experience over years and years and years, is by far the best way to do it. Introduce it again, especially if it's a discuss that's clearly looking for advantages and disadvantages. Introduce the topic, show that you know what a VLE is. Okay, advantages, disadvantages, conclusion. Abir, does that answer your question? I mean, unless does anybody else have any revolution, any ways in which they do that differently that they find has really worked? I don't want to be the only word on this. If somebody's actually had a way of doing this in the past that really worked, we were told that if the student had discussed even 2 balance points in detail, it might be able to score 8 marks. Yeah, that's a really interesting point. What it doesn't do, obviously, is say how many of the indicative content points must be addressed. Okay. If I was marking this and they had a nice little introduction and they explained 2 advantages and they explained 2 disadvantages with a summary, and it was all nice information and it was supported by the evidence, then they'd be in the top band for me. When you say 2 balanced points, do you mean one? Do you mean just 1 advantage and 1 disadvantage? Is that what you mean, or do you mean 2 of each? Okay. If that's what you've been told, then I've got no doubt that's the case. Okay. Yeah, there you go. So Sherry, I would agree with what Sherry is saying. If they've told you that can get 8, I'll get the name here. Sorry, Harindi. If they've told you that can get 8 marks, then I'm not going to disagree with anything I haven't heard. Okay, but I think you're tempting fate if you only put 1 for each. I would agree 100% with Sherry, which is if it's 8 marks and it's explain and its advantages and disadvantages, you need 2 of each. Okay, so I'm not saying, from what you're saying, it may be that 1 of each can get the 8 marks. But if I was marking it, if this was part of an assessment I was doing in house at school, and they only had 1 of each, I wouldn't be giving them more than 4 marks. Even if they had one really well explained one really explained advantage and one really explained disadvantage, that for me is not the depth of knowledge I want them to be showing the examiner. So I would agree with Sherry on that one. But Arinda, if that's what you've been told, okay. Yeah, there you go. Okay, perfect. Again, so looking at the content on there, Peony, I'll come back to that in a sec. So looking to the content on it, so availability of work 24/7. So one advantage is the availability of work 24/7. This means that if a student missed the lecture, they can come back at a later date and access the content. Okay. Can increase content with student beyond class time. Again, this means that if the student was unable to make the class, but they have questions, they can ask. Multimedia can be engaging. This means that actually through the VLE, the teacher can provide videos and animations and podcasts that allow that kind of thing. So I would be taking each one of those indicative content, adding a layer of complexity, for to get them out, and then moving on. No conclusions needed for discuss. Yeah, I agree, Sherry. It wouldn't be. I'm just trying to have it form. But yeah, you're right. If it's a discuss, I think if it was analysed, I think it's analysed. I think you need a conclusion. But I just try and get them into the habit. It's my argument with the driving test in the UK now is if there's the guideline was something like if nobody's looking, you don't need to indicate. If there's nobody around, you don't need to indicate, which means that people then don't indicate all the time. I want them to be writing a little conclusion for all of them in case they get out of the habit and then miss the conclusion when they need it. But Sherry, you're not wrong. You're not wrong at all. Peony say, what if the question is presented with items? Should students follow the structure? I'm not sure I understand what you're asking, Peony. Like digital payments, bank card, third card. And what I will say is their content in the answer needs to be relevant to the context of the scenario. So if the question was, explain the advantages to an individual of digital payments via a third-party payment system, I would be expecting them to include that content in the answer. Yeah, it's not needed. If it's just a discussion, just give the pros and cons. Correct, Mark. That's fine. Yeah. Again, we all have completely. Yeah, we're all in our. Yeah, we all know our students best. We're all in our own. Idiosyncratic environments. That's absolutely fine. Are we okay? Does anybody want to ask any more questions about this before we move on? Yeah, again, Sherry's right. Yeah, if they put a little conclusion, nobody's going to mark them down for it. That's not how the mark scheme works. Anybody got any questions about that before we move on? I'm aware we're 2/3 of the way through the session, and I want to get going. So I'm also aware that it's my fault we're going so slowly. So we're going to jump past this one quickly. Sorry, no, sorry. So this is the other one. So this is the points-based practical. So this is the one that will predominantly will appear on paper 2. So there you go. A list of holidays that I live abroad, 7 days duration. So this is an SQL query by design. So there you go. So you get the criteria showing the things they should and shouldn't have done. So for this one, they've got all 3. So they've used the correct fields. They've displayed them in the correct order, and the ID field is sorted in descending order. Okay. Again, with a lot of those, it'll be bullet points just saying, look, have they done this? Have they done this? Okay. So points-based practical ones, which is a lot of paper 2. Again, there you go, ramping a question. So that one is, give 2, identify or give 2 features. So you've got to identify 2 features. a little bit of an explanation and then a description. So you've gone from give or identify to explain to describe. And again, this is just about marking the extended writing. I think I just left this in here because it was more information. Again, discuss the positive and negative impacts of the increased availability of information online. There you go. So again, kind of indicative content. So have they listed some positives? Have they listed some negatives? And have they structured it nicely? Okay, so ladies and gents, I've talked loads. I'm aware of that. So it's now your turn to do some work. Again, it hasn't. So I don't know what, for whatever reason, you haven't got exactly the document I intended that you have, but that's okay. We can cope. So you have hopefully in front of you the PDF, which is the PDF, which is the paper one marking. Okay. No, but it's all now. It's all so instead of two 2-hour sessions, it's 1 3-hour session. So when it used to be the 2 hours, the module 1 and the module 2, we've compressed it down into this one session all at the same time. Okay, so marking practice for paper 1. So here's the situation, guys. There are a series of questions. Some are older, some are newer. That's okay. But the plan is to have a go and to mark them. Can I just check? The document I think you have is the PDF version of this PowerPoint. Yes. Okay. Not quite the right one. Let me just see if I can sort this for you. No, I can't. Okay, don't worry. Okay. So what you've got is the question, and then following the question, you have got the exemplar responses with the marks it was given and the reasons those marks were given. So what I'm going to ask you to do, the time is now 5 minutes past the hour, which means we've got 55 minutes to go. If I say that I'm going to ask you to spend 20 minutes going through the paper 1 questions and exemplar responses. And is there anywhere where you disagree or don't understand why the examiner has awarded those answers? Okay. So it's I don't know. There's been I don't know what quite's happened, but I spent an awfully long time. I put together a Word document, which was I'm going to try and find it. I'm going to see if I can try and find it and get it on here. I just need to find out where I put it. I'm going to cause myself way too much hassle here if I do this. No, okay, it's not going to work. Okay, that's a shame. Never mind. So what I'd like you to do, please, for 20 minutes is to go through the paper 1 content. Okay, go through the paper 1 content. The paper 1, yeah, that's what we're going to do, Josh. Yeah. I want you to go through the paper 1 questions and exemplar responses. See if you agree with the examiner. If there's anywhere where you think the examiner's been either generous or harsh, make a note of it, and then we'll spend 10 minutes and we'll go through the responses and we'll see if we have disagreed, why we disagree, and if we can understand why we should be, because ultimately the examiner has decided these are the right ones. So we're basically going to try and iron out any misunderstandings we might have when we're marking it. So I make it 7 minutes past the hour. Let's say we'll come back together at 25 minutes past the hour. So for me here now, it's 7 minutes past 11. So at 25 minutes past 11, we'll come back together. We should be able to have enough time for maybe 10 minutes of going through what we do and don't agree with and whether we think there's any issues. And then we'll do the same for paper 2. And that should leave us 5 minutes to just say for me to highlight some of the support that Pearson's got, and then we'll say our thank yous and goodbyes. Anybody got any questions about that? Does anybody not have access to those materials? So Batul, on the in the delegate pack you've been sent, there is a PDF. That PDF is this PowerPoint. Okay. And so you start on. Okay. If you give me a second, I'll try and fix that for you. Okay. In fact, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, not for long, just long enough to get you the right information. Just if you have, or give me 2 minutes, okay? I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm still here, okay? I don't know, Leon, are you still here, please?
Yeah, I'm here in the background.
Leon, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second, and I'm going to try and get the correct Word document to people. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's completely fine.
Okay, guys, I'll be back in a sec. Well, I'm still here. I'm just working away, just trying to make sure that I've got the right thing for you. So I'm going to stop sharing for a sec. Great. And I'm going to switch my video off so you can't all see me just looking really confused. Now, just give me a second and I'll try and find it now. Okay, folks, I have just put into the chat the link to the Word document. It's in Google Docs, but you can just download it. So I've just put into the chat the link to the Word document. So this the Word document that is linked to in the chat. It has got the questions only. Okay, it's got the questions only, and not the examiner's response. What I'll also do. I think Batul's just put. Thank you, Batul. You put the Batul. That's the delegate pack, isn't it? I think. If somebody could, thank you, Batul. If somebody could click on the link I've put and just confirm that it opens for them in, I mean, it'll link to just my Google, a file in my Google Docs area. Perfect. So, guys, if you could please, ideally, just to keep some drama in the whole situation, if you could open the link I've put in the chat, that will allow you to have a go at answering the questions without being able to see what the examiner awarded, and then you can check whether you were right or not. That was my fervent hope that we were going to do. So if you could all please click on the link in the chat that I put on at 11 minutes past the hour. That's the document that has the question, the mark scheme, and the response only. That gives you the chance to mark it without kind of the pre-knowledge, without being kind of swayed or guided by what the examiner said, and then we can check whether you're right or not. That for me, guys, is a more powerful way of doing it. We'll stick with our time frame though, so it's now 13 minutes past. What did I say? 25 minutes past the hour. So we'll aim for 25 minutes past the hour, and we'll start to have a look at some of those, comparing what you think the answer was on those questions to what the answer actually is. I think that's worked. See lots of people in it. Okay, fine. I'm also hoping, again, somebody can confirm this, that when you clicked on it, it showed it was my Google account. It's the one with the little tiger icon, the little Hobbs tiger icon. When you clicked on that document, did it show the little? Did it show it as the tiger icon? Can somebody confirm that? Or did it not say? Okay, fine. The reason I ask is that my computer went funny a couple of days ago. So I'm actually using my daughter's laptop, and I had a panicked second when I thought it would have given you the link to my. I don't know how it could have done that, but given you the link via my daughter's Google account, but it hasn't. I think it's given the link via my Google account. So what that means, and I'm aware of this, is that you can now see my Google account email address. I know somebody mentioned right at the start that they were hoping to make connections and sort of, make connections through the meeting. Who was it? I'm going to remind myself where that was. Sherry, yeah. Sorry, Sherry, you said you wanted to build contacts and collaborate. Well, Sherry, it would appear you now have my email address. So if at any point in the future you want to reach out for any advice or just to either ask for it or dispense it, you're more than welcome. So I'm aware I'm still talking. I'm aware I've asked you to do work. That's a terrible, teachers, we do that, don't we? We set a task and then keep talking. I'm hoping you're now all having a go at the paper one marking exemplars, and we'll get back together in 9 minutes. And I'm going to share my screen so that we can pick up from where we left off. And switch my video on because I'm not looking confused anymore. Leon, while everyone else is busy working away, can you just confirm that you can see my screen on the you can see the presentation on the screen again?
Yep, that one looks perfect.
Thanks, Leon. Okay, folks, I'm very aware of time. So if you can just wind up the question you're on, and then we will have a blitz through these questions and the responses and why the examiner has given or why the awards have been awarded the way they have. So for some of you, obviously, you will have seen the examiner's comments already. For others, you will have just had the Word document and you won't know. So either we'll be confirming we're confirming the marks you gave. We will be different to the marks you gave and giving you reasons as to why. Or just allowing us to discuss it. Again, this is as much about discussing as anything else. So, I went. This is a slightly older question, but it's just an example of applying the mark scheme. So, two advantages of Kiki of using a wireless method. So, response one said can move anywhere. Okay, fine. So they get a first response from mark point one, which they can move anywhere. Second response from mark point three, cheaper. Cheaper's fine, okay, because she's also put no additional costs for cables. I would always be a bit worried about a student just putting cheaper. I always think cheaper or faster requires some explanation. So yeah, cheaper. Yeah, always if you're going to give cheaper or faster, cheaper than what? Faster than what? Okay. I hope everybody gave 2 for that one. And then for the next one, she can connect many devices at the same time. So, yeah, it's. I think this came back. Who was asking about this before about connecting many devices? That's not really about connecting her smartphone specifically. That would be about the advantages of setting up a wireless LAN. I can connect many devices at the same time, and even then, it's not a wireless LAN, is it? You could technically connect lots of devices to a LAN. That's very vague. If I was answering, I'd put if I was marking this as I'd put TV. Too vague, just way too vague. She can connect from anywhere of the range of the signal, so it's not really related to portability. You could argue that the range of a signal is, well, how far does the wire go? Okay, so that's one of those questions that they sort of kind of flirted in the right area without actually being specific about anything. I'm going to keep going unless I see a little red, unless I see something on the chat that suggests that somebody's disagreeing. Okay. How Kiki smartphone can be used to provide Zara's tablet computer with an internet connection. Again, slightly older, but this is basically talking about using your device as a mobile hotspot. So this got the 3 marks because it shows that they're connected. She's written very tiny in the top left-hand corner of the phone 4G. So tablet connected to the smartphone, 4G showing how the smartphone is getting its connectivity. Mention of hotspot. No connectivity label between the devices. So she's not said how they're connected together. Yeah, Bluetooth connection, for example. She's missed that out. 2 marks because it's not the smartphone isn't shown to be connected to the internet. So 1 point only for that one. So yeah, so you couldn't do points 1 or 2 for that one because it's not showing that it's connected to the internet, but she's showing the connectivity between the tablet and the phone itself. Again, showing a USB cable. Again, I'm aware older responses, but it's about whether we can meet just interpreting the mark scheme. This is relevant. Okay, so benefit of using solid state storage within a smartphone. So we've got 2 marks. Explain. So what is the benefit? Why is it a benefit? Is what we're looking for. So there you go. Data transfer. Any of those. Okay. Given 1 mark. So it's durable. Okay, which just about again. Yeah, fine. Durable is it's an accepted term. Okay. But they've then defined what durable is. It's durable because it doesn't lose all of its data. Okay. So they would have needed to have expanded on what durability means. Okay. They've tried, to be fair to them. Okay. But there you go. Okay. Yeah. So that was a one marker. This works well with smartphones. People tend to, they've almost said the same thing three times, really. I think if you were being generous, you could probably have a hunt around for the second mark there. But certainly when I'm marking their assessments, if I'm marking assessments in my school, I mark pretty harshly just to get me to the habit of being accurate. Yeah, it's not anything to do with the context of the question. So we go back to the question a sec. The benefit of using solid state storage with a smartphone, the speed of and again works very fast. Is a bit vague. I'd be wanting them to talk about high read write speed, but is the speed of the connection the reason why we have solid state drives in devices? No, it's not. It's about durability, no moving parts, size. So although high read write speed is a characteristic of flash storage, of solid state storage, it's not why we have it in a smartphone. Right, okay. Hosted applications with tablet computers. So this is actually talking about software as a service. So this is using a slightly older term for Google Docs, Microsoft 365, that kind of thing. So nowadays, I think that would be. I don't think maybe it says in the specification. I suspect in the question that it would talk of software. It would talk about software as a service or cloud services. So yeah, so this is 2 marks because they acknowledge the fact that you're not installing the application and therefore not reducing the amount of storage space required on the computer. I think if they'd put you don't need to install it and therefore it's not stored on your computer, that would only get 1 mark. Okay, it's the same thing twice. It not being installed is it not taking up it not being stored, if that makes sense. Whereas it's not installed and therefore doesn't take up storage space is linking the two things together. Again, 1 mark. So all they've said is it doesn't need to be installed, which is fine. They're just not built on it. See a little red chat. No, if I reduce the storage space requirements of something, I'm saving storage space for other things to use. Yeah. So I would say that it's two sides of the same coin. By reducing the storage space required by an application, I'm saving storage space so it can be used for something else. I would be very reluctant to give it reduces storage space and therefore saves space for other things 2 marks. Joshua, sorry. Does that make sense, Joshua? I think they're too similar to warrant 2 different points. Okay. What time we got? 34. Okay. So this is about MAC addresses, and obviously, if they want to be really smart or demonstrate good knowledge, they can talk about firewalls and packet sniffing and what constitutes a blacklist or a whitelist. So MAC addresses are universally unique. Fine, good understanding. So therefore, they know what a MAC address is. They've defined it. So they've mentioned firewalls. So they've got the mark for firewalls. And they've also talked about a whitelist on a file. So they've talked about, they know what a MAC address is. They know that MAC addresses are linked to firewalls, and they know that firewalls can be whitelisted. Great. Okay. This one is 2 marks because they acknowledge that there's such a thing as a MAC address. They know that the MAC address can be matched or checked against the device, but didn't actually mention the firewall itself. And again, just remember, there's going to look at that. For some of these, there'll be more than, if it's 3 marks, some of these will have 4 or 5 points. This one's got 3, but that's fine. But if you look at it, they'll get the mark just for saying MAC addresses can be linked to firewalls can be used with MAC addresses. Okay, and that MAC addresses are unique. MAC addresses are unique. Checked by a firewall and can be whitelisted or blacklisted. It doesn't even ask to explain what blacklisted and whitelisted is. Okay. There you go. So Bluetooth rather than infrared. This is 2 marks. Again, this is a context thing. So don't accept responses about range for the first mark. Okay. Or responses related to transfer speed and bandwidth. Because range isn't massively important, I would suggest, on this one. And neither is transfer speed. It's not a huge amount of data that's being transferred. So 2 marks. Perfect. Infrared requires line of sight, which isn't possible during exercise. So with Bluetooth, it's more flexible. Great. Perfect answer. On this one, they've acknowledged that Bluetooth doesn't need line of sight, but they've not really then linked the rest of the question to the scenario. So they've just given a non-context based answer. At no point really, in fact, they've not mentioned the fitness tracker at all in the answer. So that's another one of those. If they put some context in there, they'd stand a much greater chance of getting the second mark. Okay, for this one, maybe bytes of data. So again, lots of these, they often get lots of guidance. So 1 mark for sight of 8, sight of 1024, then a complete expression. So they could have written 8 and 1024, and they're in the running. Okay. So this one has got 3 marks. Yeah. So there's some funky stuff going on, but they've got all 3 marks because at the end of the day, they've gone bytes. They've not got the things right. Again, construct the expression. They've done 4 times 1024 times 8. They've not. Yeah, they've missed a bit out, but yeah, they've got it all in there. Okay. So this one's got 4. It's got the 1,000, and we're allowed to accept 1,000 instead of 1024 because the mark scheme says so. But they've not done much else with it. Okay. So yeah, they can't have 1 mark for sight of 4, but they have got it for 1,000 and for 8. And it's funny. It's one of those that the second response seems to be offering an awful lot less than the first one, but they've still got 2 marks for it. That's the way it works sometimes. And then this one we saw before. So discuss the impact of VLA on learners. If memory serves right, one of these, the handwriting was a bit tricky on it. Oh no, that was the nice handwriting. So 7 marks. So again, they've gone over. Okay, but they're not being done. As again, coming back to one of the questions before, they've not been negatively marked for going over the space. Positive and negative. So it's clearly top band. So there's a best fit for top band, and it was just considered maybe not absolutely brilliant, but certainly very good. And as we've discussed and agreed already, a conclusion is not required for questions that use the command word discuss. So that was 7. I hope as long as you're in top band for that, I think we'll be okay. This one was 3, so limited number of points. Only 1. There you go. So that kind of comes back to the discussion you had before. Only 1 for 1 for and 1 against. This is not a range of points, so it does not meet the criteria for mark from level 2 or 3. So this is a level 1, but actually there's some nice stuff in there, so it ends up at the top of level 1. So actually that examiner's comment answers a lot of the questions we had previously, and that takes us on to marking practice for paper 2. The time is 39 minutes past the hour. Can we get back together? Does anybody have any questions about that, by the way? I always end up rushing this bit. I don't know why it is. Let's do 15 minutes on the marking of practice paper 2, please. We'll get back together at, well, we're not even going to have time. Let's do 10 minutes, guys. 10 minutes. So we've at least got time to look through a couple of them. And then we can go from there. I apologize if time is being compressed a little bit. I will say, by the way, on this one, there you go. I'm going to give you the answer to this one. This got all the marks except for that, and you can't see it on the example. The area between the diver's left arm and the head is still included in the background. So there's a bit here that shouldn't be there. Okay, but 10 minutes, please. Apologies. So yeah, hopefully you found use in the other stuff we've discussed. But if we get back together at 10 minutes so 10 minutes to the hour. I hope everybody's okay with that. Keep going. Okay, folks, we're approaching 50 minutes past the hour. So, if you can, I can wrap up the question you're on, and we'll have a quick blitz through the responses that these, the marks that these responses got. And then hopefully that'll take about 5 minutes, which will give us 5 minutes to do a little bit of housekeeping at the end, and then hand back over to Leon. So, right. So, as I said before, on this one here, so again, this is a class example. They've had to get the scuba dive image from the images folder, done a bit of editing, remove the background, and include the company name or CS Scuba. And so on here, they get 1 mark. So they've included CS Scuba, which is nice. They didn't get the mark for removing the background. You can't really see it on here because the area between the diver's left arm and the head still included in the background. Okay, which is the left arm, which is it's here. It's here. Okay, there you go. And on this one, no. So they haven't included the logo, and they've just kind of done some very clumsy work with the eraser tool by the look of it. Drawback of using a bitmap image for a logo, again, so they're focused basically on pixelation if they've gone smart with it. So there you go. Static resolution, so nice use of technical language, and looks pixelated if enlarged. I even said unlike vector images, which is a nice addition. Okay, fine. As it consumes more memory for storage. So yes, it does. Okay. Why? Okay. So talking about so if we go back to the mark scheme a sec, it's going to work. It won't. Okay, I will. Yeah. So they can. So they've talked about taking more storage space up, but not said because the file size is an increasing file size, which is a shame, really. They've almost gone to they've gone to the second part of the answer before doing the first part. Creating a form for the destinations table. Again, there's 3 things they need to do: match the house style, suitable title, and all field labels center aligned. So they've matched the house style, fine. Suitable heading, fine. They haven't center aligned the field labels. Okay. And you can see they're on the left hand side. Okay. And on this one, suitable title, center align the field label, so you can see that where holiday ID, country, region, but they didn't match the house style because they omitted the logo. There you go. So this one is use the destination forms to add these details to the table. And so it provides the details, the holiday ID, the country, the region, etc. And again, 2 marks for 6 entries, 1 mark for 3 or 5, nothing for 0, 1 or 2. It's given 2 marks. They've put all 6 correct entries in, which is nice. There you go. On this one, apologies about the way it's set up. So they for some reason they ignored the actual details they were given to add, but they went to the database table provided and picked out ones and included them properly anyway. I can see somebody's asking a chat question. Oh, there you go. Yeah, I know what you're saying, Sherry. Yeah, I think that's one of those that once you've seen that type of question, you just need to advise that it means the field names. Field stroke field name. I know what you're saying. I suppose one way around that is to center align them both. And I'm not sure it would allow for the second one. But yeah, I know what you're saying. Ways around it, don't know really. So we could look at the question again. Too far, yeah. the form must be customized so that all fields have alignment center. So you're arguing that it's saying about the field. Okay, I know what you're saying. Uh, if we've seen that again since, then it's an issue. I'm hoping that. Well, would it in the form? Would it even in the form when they're entering into the form? Isn't it defaulted to the middle anyway? Maybe, but yeah, I see your point. I do see your point. Yeah, field name versus field content. Okay, fine. So there you go. So this one again, they've ignored for some reason the details given in the question, but they've gone and found them anyway. So they've done the skill even if it's not with the correct content. So list. So this is a query. So again, there's the query by design that they should have run. Again, here they've got all 5 marks because they have included all 3 criteria. They've included a wildcard in for the blue water boats and displayed it properly as well, which is nice. On this one, 4 marks. They have not wildcarded on blue water, and so I've lost out there. Okay, if they'd used a wildcard in the dive boat company, that'd have been all right. I'm trying to keep up with the chats as well. Okay. Another one. Sorry, I'm just going to close the chat so I can see what I'm doing. So, again, another query. Okay, an 8-mark query. So, and a query with a report. Sorry. So a little bit of extra complexity. So there we go. So this is 6 out of 8, I think. So it has yeah, so they've lost the points because 2 of them in the wrong order, and they've not formatted the field headings properly, but all of everything else was good, pretty close. Again, 6 marks because Philippines not spelled correctly in the heading, and that's kind of pretty important. Right up at the top. And no marking for 0.7 as the field headings were not formatted to bold and italics or another one. There you go. So several candidates has not achieved the mark for formatting. So we as teachers therefore know that that's a bit of a blind spot for students. So we emphasize it. We emphasize the need for formatting. I think this is the last one, but we're going to run out of time, I think. So 2 linked pages, home and courses with the requirements for each, designs included. We're out of time. Okay, but again, so on this one, there's the mark scheme, and this response was given 15 marks. It's actually a pretty nice example, and it's all in there. Okay, guys, I'm gonna have to skip forward on this one, I'm afraid. You've all now got, or you've been supplied with this, so you can check that anyway. This is the last one. Just to reiterate, the support is available for you in lots of places through Pearson. There's the web page for the qualification, which I highly recommend going to. All the teaching and learning materials are on there. If you haven't had a look at Results Plus already, I would do so. It's great for analysing where how you went as a centre. Exam Wizard is great for building your own assessments beforehand from past paper content. Access to scripts allows you to have a look at what your students did to perhaps identify common mistakes. There's the textbook, which we've identified is not going to be updated anytime soon, but is still a very good resource. And you can always get in touch with Tim, whose details are on the website if you want any information for that as well. Other than that, there's the Professional Development Academy through Pearson, which is well worth a look. And there are the newsletters you can sign up to. I'll leave the QR code on the screen for a few seconds, but you have that on the PDF as well. And other than that, if there are no questions, and I'm happy for there to be questions, but unless anybody has any questions, we are done just about in the nick of time. So I've left about 90 seconds for questions and to hand back over to Leon for any final housekeeping. So before I hand back over to Leon, does anybody have any questions? I apologise for having to go through that last little bit so quickly, but the majority of you have been able to access that PowerPoint with the questions on it anyway. Leon, it appears there are no questions, so I'll hand back over to you. Oh, there might be one set in the chat. Oh no, not questions. Basma, thank you, but no, thank you for taking part. Thank you all, in fact, for taking part, and some very valuable contributions from you all as well. And yeah, just thanks for paying attention and being part of it. Thank you, guys.